What's up, humans? My name is David, and I help people develop self-awareness and self-compassion. And welcome to another Blue Chair Talk. The Blue Chair Talks are weekly unscripted videos that I do with 10 minutes of chatting and 10 minutes of guided meditation. So not super long. And usually the talks are going to be around developing self-awareness and self-compassion. And right now, we're doing sort of a series on the two hemispheres of the brain and the role that they can play in developing self-awareness and, in fact, self-compassion, which we will get to in time. In fact, the next few episodes after this week are going to be using examples from the research on the hemispheres and sort of what we can learn about human nature and the different sort of values and the different roles that the two hemispheres have that are really always at play within us as we go through our daily lives. Fascinating stuff. So I'm really looking forward to bringing sort of concrete examples from the research literature. Thanks as always to The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. This is where I learned about all of this stuff. Definitely did not do any research myself, but I am really enjoying learning more about it and trying to incorporate it into my life and my own practices of self-awareness and self-compassion. So today we are kind of picking up on where we left off from the last two episodes about the hemisphere. We did one where I tell you the story of the master and his emissary, and then the most recent episode was kind of the biology of it all, and we talked about human brains, and we looked at animal brains, and then we tried to circle back around and talk about the human mind. And a sort of similar thing today that we're going to do. What I want to do is try and sort of give you the punchline. And I'll say there's a pretty massive danger to oversimplifying here. We want a simple answer, which is understandable, but newsflash, the human brain and the human mind is complicated, right? We got whole fields devoted to this, and there's anybody in those fields, they'll tell you we know some stuff. Mostly we don't know. There's so much we don't know. So I don't want to oversimplify, but I do want to cut to the chase. And so that's this episode. I'm going to try to give you what I think are like the most helpful takeaways and insights about these hemispherical differences, why we have a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere, and what all is going on. So a few decades ago, there was some research published on it, and some of the researchers and definitely the media way oversimplified, making unhelpful claims about, for example, the right hemisphere is your artsy hemisphere or your emotional hemisphere. And so maybe you're a really right brain kind of person if you're super artsy, or by contrast, they would claim did I get that correctly? The right hemisphere. Anyway, the right hemisphere is the artsy one, quote unquote. That's what they were saying. And then the left hemisphere is like the logic and facts kind of hemisphere, and definitely the more intelligent one. And man, all of that was just so misleading. So I don't want to be misleading. And I think I've got a pretty good sort of punchline here, or like top two takeaways kind of thing in store for you. And those aren't them, right? It is not the case that the left hemisphere is the most logical and intelligent one, and that the right hemisphere is the like artsy emotional one. Those are very likely more projections that we as humans are sort of placing our biases on the research, and the early research. In fact, there's been a lot more research that has happened since then. So what we really can say for sure is that it seems the left hemisphere, which is in control of your right hand, it's evolutionarily evolved reason for being, its purpose, its whole value system is all centered around manipulation and control of the environment. Now, that's its basic function, but humans, again, sort of in reference to evolution, the human mind is so much more complex. So where that was originally its evolved purpose, we are going to start to see ways in which that's still the theme, right? That the left hemisphere is still about manipulation and control of the environment, but that has really kind of expanded because the human mind and brain have expanded in their roles. They've become so much more complex. So we do so much more than just pick up a seed off the ground or just see a fruit that we really like and, oh, it's red, and so I can easily tell it apart and we go get it. We're going to dive into that just a little bit here. So really the main thing that I want to try and point out is while we can sort of say that pretty confidently about the left hemisphere, that is about manipulation and control of the environment, how that plays out for us humans as much more complicated beings is much more complicated. So tune into the next few episodes to see that kind of unpacked and explored. But for our purposes, like I said, kind of the main headliner, kind of takeaways in learning about the hemispheres is that because that is the sort of original purpose of the left hemisphere, it is the part of us that experiences reality through a mostly mutually exclusive kind of lens, an either or kind of lens. Now, evolutionarily, this makes perfect sense. If you want to manipulate the environment, it needs to be clear to you in exquisite detail. Am I grasping this thing or am I grasping that thing? Right? If there wasn't a clear boundary, a clear differentiation of this thing and that thing, the left hemisphere wouldn't be doing its job well. So its way of apprehending reality, of interpreting and of experiencing reality is all about clear boundaries, really obvious delineations between that thing and this thing. Imagine a berry in the branches, right? It's an easier task because nice color contrast between like the red berry and the maybe green leaves behind it, right? But that's the thing that the left hemisphere is doing all the time. It is observing or conceiving of, or sometimes imagining clear boundaries around things, right? As humans became more and more maybe possessive, right? As our cultures developed ways of thinking that entailed ownership, right? Then that delineation, those boundaries that the left hemisphere is so good at, that started extending to things that are mine and things that aren't mine, or things that are me and things that aren't me, right? So identity formation, even within our mind, is heavily involving the left hemisphere of like meanness and not meanness. So that's kind of our, I don't know, our basic thing, right? That's like that. I think most of the other insights that we can learn and then apply to our lives, I think are still pretty much based on this idea that the left hemisphere evolved for the control and manipulation of the environment. And well, interesting, I haven't said much about the right hemisphere, the other one. What's it doing? And this was kind of a similar thing that happened as researchers were researching the brains. They were like, we're getting a clear picture of what the left hemisphere is doing, but what all is the right doing? Is it all that important? And my friends, it is critical, and that's really one of the main points that Ian McGilchrist is making throughout that book. It's just why and how we overlooked how important the right hemisphere is. So don't worry, we'll be getting into that in the next few episodes here over the coming weeks. But for today, I'll just tell you that hemisphere is the mutually inclusive, the both and hemisphere. Ooh, exciting stuff. So I look forward to diving into all of that over the coming weeks. But for today, the remainder of our time, let's settle into a meditation. About a 9 or 10 minute meditation. And let's go ahead and, wherever you are, kind of settle in. Hopefully it is a peaceful enough environment. And as usual, start this time by a few breaths and by bringing your attention to the present moment and your present physical reality. Whether you are quite experienced or whether this is the very first time that you're attempting meditation, try to just be aware, just notice what's happening with your thoughts. It can be tricky, but the general idea is to be where you are and to remain where you are and enjoy it to the extent that you can. So any thoughts that bring you away, that sort of carry your attention off into a story, anytime you notice a phrase or partial phrase going through your mind, these are the perfect opportunity to actually just lightly step back from those thoughts and those words in our minds and let them go. And return your attention as fully and as softly as you can to just this, the here and now. It's common in meditation for any number of unpleasant emotions to arise. And those are usually more difficult to sort of notice and then simply let go of. That is not as easy, but with practice, it is actually quite possible. As long as we realize that all emotions, all feelings are temporary anyway. And it's often our reaction to the emotions that makes them stick around longer. So, to whatever degree you are able to, when you notice frustration maybe with yourself for getting distracted again, or maybe you notice boredom. Oi, I'm just supposed to watch my breath. Try to notice those difficult feelings with a peacefulness, actually a degree of acceptance. Not a holding on to them, but a welcoming of them that then allows a release, a letting go. Alrighty, my friends, as we wrap up this meditation and this blue chair talk, the invitation, the opportunity of practice this week is actually a gratitude practice, a gratitude for your left hemisphere. So try and notice throughout the week as you reach out your dominant hand to take a hold of something. That's so easy and so natural to us. It so rarely goes wrong. Our left hemisphere is so good at manipulating the environment. Praise God. This is an incredible ability that we have. The left hemisphere is limited, but it is not evil. So this week, sort of in preparation for everything we're going to learn over the next few weeks, I want to encourage you into a practice of gratitude. Every time that you kind of remember this talk and you see yourself reaching for something, grabbing a hold of your car keys or your wallet or a drink to put some H2O into your body, you can be thankful. You can remember, wow, this is crazy easy. This is crazy good. So that's the idea for this week. I really look forward to continuing to unpack all of this and talk about ways that we can apply it and develop better self-awareness and self-compassion in our lives. And until next week, know your mind, love your life.